Luke, we hear about all these technologies, and as government is modernizing, what do you see as the priorities for government to be thinking and key initiatives that you see might play a major role in 2020?
Yeah, I think there are several major initiatives that are using, what we'll say, adopting this modern technology movement. Right, you're off of the what I like to call the pliers and wires kind of configuration, moving into a smart cloud smart kind of configuration where you're now able to implement these capabilities in a cloud environment. You've moved several of the data centers, consolidated them into these either hybrid or multi-cloud kind of environments. So that work is still going to go on in 2020. It'll go on in 2021. But you're now starting to see agencies go from a kind of a lift and shift into that environment into what we're calling an organic build, right? Where you're building an application inside of the cloud environment, sort of from ground zero, and taking advantage of all the capability, elasticity, the security, the mobile connectivity, all the things that the cloud allows you to have from zero, right? So these are purpose-built systems in many cases. I think you're going to start to see more of that. There's a lot of good modern technology that's available that the federal community is starting to adopt. I think that the contract community is starting to continue to evolve in regards to understanding the most efficient way to acquire those goods and services, right? That's a different kind of model when you're buying a service by the drink, so to speak, than when you're buying a capability of software and sort of installing it yourself. It's a different kind of model. So as the community emerges and evolves, they're going to be able to start doing that kind of out of the box, right? I can start to build these purpose-built environments in this cloud that I've now been in. I've got good contracting capability to do that, and I can do it fairly rapidly. Right alongside that, you're going to have a whole bunch of low-code, no-code kind of configurations. These are the Salesforces, the ServiceNows that you're going to be continuing to install in these agencies, and then the agencies starting to adopt broad use of those, right? And I think that is something that is beginning to happen. I think it's in the early stages. I think there's going to be wide adoption in regards to that, which is going to unlock a whole bunch of capability in regards to just back-end type of goods and services that every employee has to deal with. The IT organizations will be able to modernize those very quickly. They'll be able to put them in a mobile environment very quickly. And so gone are the days going to be that when you're building a capability, some sort of a business application, and your first port is on the desktop. A lot of these agencies that we are familiar with and work with over the years, 75% of their workforce is mobile. They're not sitting behind a desk. They have to go behind a desk to enter in the information or open the case file or update the case file, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to be able to do that in a much more mobile-enabled way, and they'll do that on what we call a first port. In other words, as the application gets built and rolled out, it'll immediately show up on the mobile device, which I think is very important. The other area that I think is going to be huge is going to be RPA, right? Robotics process automation, which is really where you're automating a lot of these redundant methodologies or redundant exercises that a lot of federal employees have to do today. Go into this system, check this. Go on to that system, check that. Log in, marry the data, put it in a spreadsheet. A lot of that stuff can be done automated using these types of technologies. And a lot of these vendors are now taking that basic rudimentary, what we'll call kind of fancy scripting, and raising that to a higher order using AI and ML, machine learning and artificial intelligence, to sort of anticipate some of these things and actually take those steps much further. Allows the general employee to sort of, what I always like to call, take the robot out of the human, right? And allows some of that sort of rote type of work to be done in a automated fashion so that you can, work on higher value type capability. The other area that I think is really important, and there will be some technology associated to this, but there's also some policy that's now out there, is just the ability to hire in the talent that you need and do that in a relatively short amount of time. Right talent at the right time, right? We're not talking about employees, IT employees anymore, that are going to do 20 and 30 years of federal service. We're talking about employees that are going to do 4-year stints and serve the community that they are so interested in, whatever mission that is, and then cycle back out into the private sector. One other area that I want to point out that I think is really important is IoT and sort of the whole sensor technology. There is a lot of technology that's out there. If you look at your car is almost like a big IoT device, right? It's doing a lot of sensing, it's doing a lot of automation, and it's almost a data center on wheels, but there's a lot of capability coming out of the automobile industry, the industrial sort of manufacturing community that are starting to use IoT in ways that people never thought were possible. That's collecting a lot of data, right? What do you do with all that data? How do you do smart things with that data? Well, you can do that now using artificial intelligence and marine and machine learning. I think the government's a little half a step back on some of those activities, but will quickly start to adopt them as they become more mature. The tools around those become more prevalent and easier to use, easier to plug together and adopt. One thing I did want to point out is the ability to snap these technologies is becoming a lot easier to do than it used to be. Long are the days where it takes an act of Congress to get your phone ported from one carrier to another. That's a plug and play type environment. You start to see the same simplicity in the software area, and I think the agencies will take great advantage of that in 2020 and beyond.